What's going on, everyone? So welcome to my latest video. This is part of my new top 10 series where I'm focusing on a specific composer and deciding to figure out what my 10 favorite scores are from that composer of the video that I'm doing. And then before that, deciding to do honorable mentions and then going from 10 to 1, with 1 being my favorite score from the composer of the video that I'm doing. And in the case of this video, you clicked it so you know it. To kick off this series, I'm doing my top 10 favorite Cliff Martinez film scores. And I'm excited, I really am, because Cliff Martinez is such a gifted composer. So I'm really excited to give you guys honorable mentions and going from 10 to 1, with number 1 being my favorite film score from Cliff Martinez. Now, this will not include any TV shows that you might have done or music videos, specifically speaking, film scores. And two things to take in consideration, at least in regards to me figuring out this list, was one, did the film score make me feel something when I was actually watching the film? Did it elevate the sound of the film? And then the second thing is, do I listen to the score outside of watching the film? Like when I'm driving to work or when I'm driving down the shore, do I listen to the score? So those are also things I took into consideration. And then also what I'm going to do is, when I give you guys the film score, I'm also going to put down a certain track from that film that I personally believe really says, like, hey, this is such a great score. So I'll be doing that so that way you guys can also listen to these pieces of music that I'm choosing from these films. But as a whole, of course, I love these film scores. So, but guys, enough exposition. Let's get started with honorable mentions. So with Cliff Martinez, I'm filming this video on January 11th of 2025. And as of filming this video, I really only have 2 honorable mentions in regards to film scores of his that were close to making my top 10. The first one is King of the Hill. I really liked the score. It's a shame that the score is hard to find in regards to like Apple Music and just in general, like on YouTube. But it is one of those scores that when I was watching the film, I thought that it sounded really good and elevated a lot of scenes and made me feel emotional, which I liked. So I liked that score. And then one score that was so close to making this list was Den of Thieves. I thought this was a really good score, and it sounded very unique, especially in the context of doing a heist film. So I really liked it. There are a lot of tracks that I think work and elevate certain scenes, especially during the heist at the end. So I think Den of Thieves, one of the things about this film also I wanted to mention is that when I first saw this film, I wasn't a fan of it. When I watched it a second time, and the reason why I decided to come back to it a second time in the first place was for the film score by Cliff Martinez. So it really tells you a lot about how well this score works in the context of this film. So I like Cliff Martinez's score in this film, and that's why I have it as an honorable mention. And now, guys, to kick off the top 10, let's get number 10 started. So my number 10, we have Traffic. This is a very, very underappreciated score. It works really well in the context of the film, and I would listen to the score quite often, but unfortunately, it's not on Apple Music or like Amazon Music. It's very hard to find this music, but every now and then I will listen to it on YouTube, and it sounds really good, and especially in the context of the film. So I really like Traffic itself, but of course, the score itself really, really elevates a lot of scenes. So love the score for Traffic. Next up, my number 9, we have The Foreigner. This is a film that I didn't see in theaters. I actually saw it one time a couple years ago. And the standout for this film, hands down, is the score. Like, the film itself, it's all right. It's enjoyable for sure. But that score is fantastic. It sounds really, really good. Like, there are so many scenes where the score comes into the sound design. I'm like, holy cow, that sounds amazing. So I really, really like this film score. And I think that if you've been sleeping on this film and you like Cliff Martinez, highly recommend you check out this film. It's worth watching alone for the score. So that was my number 9. Next up, my number 8. This is a film nobody talks about, but they should. And we have my number 8, The Limey. Love this film. The film itself is great. This score it's near impossible to find. You can find some of the soundtrack on YouTube, but not the score itself on YouTube. But the score is very hard to find in regards to Apple Music, Prime, and just in general. But in the context of the film, it's amazing. It's so soothing, but at the same time tense. And it really puts you in the mindset of the lead character. It's a phenomenal score. Doesn't get talked about enough, the film itself, but especially the score by Cliff Martinez. Phenomenal. Truly an incredible score. So that was my number 8. Next up, my number 7, we have Game Night. So the thing about Game Night that I absolutely love is that a lot of times, I say this in my live streams, a lot of times comedies, the scores are just so forgettable. and also the cinematography is often very forgettable. But what's nice about Game Night is that there is so much care that's put into the cinematography, and it just goes to show that the directors really care about filmmaking, because they're like, all right, we want this film to look good, but you know what? We're also going to hire Cliff Martinez, and we know that he is not, in this for just a paycheck. He wants to make a really good score. So they hired him, and yeah, he delivered an incredible score that works really well. I liked this film the first time I saw it, but what made me want to rewatch it a second time was the score, and it's easily one of the best aspects of this film. Of course, the comedy works really well, but that score sounds so good, and it works amazingly well with the images displayed on screen. So I love Game Night. The score itself is also really good, and that's why I have it as my number 7. Next up, my number 6, we have The Neon Demon. Phenomenal score. Again, if it hasn't been known at this point, one of the things that makes me want to rewatch a film a lot of times is the cinematography or the score and other filmmaking aspects. So The Neon Demon, when I first saw it with my wife in theaters, I thought it was okay, but I couldn't get the score out of my head. So the score was one of those things where I would listen to it quite often. And that's what made me come back to it every time, was the score was just so amazing. There are so many haunting scenes, and also is very soothing, and in other instances, just very emotionally gripping. So it's an incredible score. If you've been sleeping on this film, and you like art house films, highly recommend watching it. It is one of the best films from Nicholas Winding Refn, and it's one of the best scores from Cliff Martinez. And that's why I have it as my number 6. And now we get into the nitty-gritty, top 5. So my number 5, we have Spring Breakers, a film that when I first saw it, I felt mixed about, but the score was just so amazing. The score was just one of those things that really contributed a lot to the tone, the vibe, and just the directing style that was emulated. So it's one of those films that really is atmospheric, and I love the score. I've listened to this so many times. It never gets old, and again, it's what made me want to rewatch this film a second time. And the more I watch this film, the more I love it. But one of the highlights of this film, besides the cinematography, is the score by Cliff Martinez. One of the best scores from him, and why it is my number 5. Next up, my number 4, this is a film that, as the filming this video, unfortunately doesn't have a Blu-ray or 4K release, which is why I don't own it on physical media yet. But anyways, my number 4, we have Solaris. What can I say? I really liked this film. But one of the big things that immediately struck me about this film was within a couple minutes, I was like, holy cow, this score is incredible. It's amazing. It really is. It really captures the tone that Soderbergh wanted to set for this film. And I think that it works perfectly with the imagery on screen. I've listened to the score many times driving. It's just so good. It's romantic. It's also very dramatic. It's soothing. It has every emotion that you could possibly want from a film score emulated into one score. And it works really well in the context of the film and outside of it. So yeah, that's why I have it as my number 4. Next up, my number 3, we have a very divisive film. My number 3, we have Only God Forgives. Look, even if you don't like this film, the score, it's incredible. One of the best of the 2010s. I can't get enough of the score. I really can't. In fact, I liked this film from my first viewing. Like when I first saw it, I was like, yeah, this is a good film. But I keep coming back to it more and more times because I'll be listening to this score on its own and I'm like, yeah, this is a really good film. Let me rewatch it. And then I rewatch it. I'm like, yeah, this score works even better. Like it works incredibly well on its own, but it works even better in the context of the film with the imagery that's on display. So I really like Only God Forgives, and I think it's one of Cliff Martinez's best scores easily. And that's why that has my number 3. Next up, my number 2, this is the film that really got me into Cliff Martinez's filmography, honestly. Like, if I'm being 100% honest, like, this is the film that, when I was watching it, the score immediately spoke to me, and I was like, let me check out this composer's other work. My number 2, we have Contagion. That's right. Right away, when the film starts and the score seeps into the sound mix, it's like, this is really good. And it does an incredible job in regards to the pacing of the film and the tone that is set out with the directing and the writing. So I love the score. It works incredibly well on its own, but also in the context of the film, it's just superb. One of Cliff Martinez's best scores. I was actually kind of surprised it didn't get a best score nomination at the Oscars. It's that good of a score. So yeah, that's why I have it as my number 2. Next up, my number 1. This is a score that ironically came out the same year as Contagion, which is probably why Contagion score didn't get nominated, and also why this one didn't get nominated, because they probably, crossed each other out. But my number one, we have Drive. Perfect score. Yes, the soundtrack's amazing. Don't get me wrong. The soundtrack, the lyrical music, it's amazing. But the score itself is just fantastic. Specifically, that scene on the elevator towards the end, phenomenal. That piece of music that Cliff Martinez conjured up, incredible. Really, really incredible stuff. Just a score that seeps with the atmosphere that is intended, with the neo-noir lighting, by the cinematography, and just an overall incredible score. If you've been sleeping on this film, I highly recommend it. It's worth watching for the score alone. And the score, of course, it works on its own. It is, in my opinion, Cliff Martinez's best score. And that's why I have it as my number one. But yeah, guys, that is my top 10 favorite Cliff Martinez film scores as the filming of this video, January 11th, 2025. Let me know what your top 10 favorite scores are by Cliff Martinez, or even top 5. Let me know in the comment section down below. I'm very curious to see what your list will pertail of. And then also, I am looking to do several other composers throughout the year, so stay tuned for that. And let me know in the comment section with film composers that you want to see. I know for sure that I'm looking to do like Hans Zimmer, Thomas Newman, Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross, composers like that I'm planning to do. But let me know, something in the comment section that you might want me to do. And I appreciate you guys for watching. If you haven't done so already, follow me on Patreon, Letterboxd, with the subscription, notification bell. Catch you guys later.